welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I'm constantly going back to school, but seemingly learning nothing. And I come to you live from Crater Valley on the moon with Dog Cat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Thursday, Tempestuous Thursday. Yes, we return once again to the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks. And before I get into tonight's subject, who's joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening? That's what it is, right? Thursday? Yes, it's Thursday. Noah Asensio, hello. Keeverdam, hello. Advocatus Diaboli, hello. Who else is here? Mike R, hello. Spoony the Rebel, hello. Shell D, hello. Tyrannus Alexandrius, the Invictus Lich, hello. Tall Person, hello. Hi, M. Steve, hello. Devilfruit Zero, hello. Megan Ring, hello. Mike R, hello. Let's see. Found, hello. Shadowclaw, hello. Non-Vitae Rex, hello. Derek LaRue, thank you so much. Holy cats. Thank you so much. It's so generous of you, Derek, as always. Appreciate your support and your generosity as always. Hope you're having a good Thursday so far. And I hope you enjoy the show. Who else is here? 01 Portnoy, hello. Angelverse, hello. Ostzan, hello. John Miller, hello. Did I skip you? Oh, I didn't mean to skip you. Well, if I did, I apologize. But yes, hello to you all and to anyone who's lurking or in the future or hasn't said hello yet. Hello. So tonight, I think it's been a while since I've done something specifically on education, at least a month or two. I tried to look back and see. I try not to dwell on one subject too often if I can help it. But yes, so education, as many of you might know, has been a interest of mine for many years now. I have a playlist on my channel called Curriculum of Fear, where over the course of the last 6 years or so, I've looked at different examples of education with some disturbing implications and trends going on. Although, of course, they're not so much trends anymore because a lot of the things I looked at back in the olden days are now basically mainstream. And one of the trends that has disturbed me more than anything else over the years has been the sense of place that teachers have within their jobs. Let me explain that briefly. When I was growing up back in the olden days, if I were to be told that a professor at a university had decided that they were a guru of a kind to their students, that would not seem at all surprising to me. That was kind of a stereotypes about professors, liberal colleges, so on and so forth. But elementary school teachers, K through 12, always seemed, and maybe this is just my rose-colored glasses, relatively sacrosanct when it came to trying to manipulate the minds of young children. Just didn't seem like the right thing to do. Once you become an adult and you go off to college and, you're free to make your own choices and things. But as far as like academics were concerned for K through 12, you stick to the basics. You don't try to mold the children into a particular way of thinking. At least that's the ideal, right? Well, that's not so much the thing anymore, because oftentimes I'm watching teachers who are in K through 12 or otherwise believing themselves to be something other than there to teach the students the basics of academics. And that's why the title of tonight's presentation caught my attention initially. Beyond the Purpose of an Educator. That right there caught me in like a red flag territory. Like, okay, why do you feel that you need to go beyond your job description? That's my first question. Now, of course, I don't know what our speaker is going to say because I've never watched these things ahead of time. But this time, something also caught my eye. Now, usually, unless the title of a presentation is ambiguous enough to cause me to wonder what is the presentation about, I don't usually look at the description of the video if I can help it. I want to come in as blind as I can. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, one particular phrase in the description of this video also caught my eye, which made me have even more questions. And that phrase is trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care. And so when I thought about that phrase and trying to break it down sort of like a spelling bee contestant, I thought, what does this have to do with the classroom? We're not talking about an ER, I'm assuming. So the kind of trauma that could be applicable here, I'm hoping is not like the blunt force kind. So we must be talking about psychological. So unless our speaker teaches at a very specialized school of some kind, and that's entirely possible, I'm really having a hard time in my mind figuring out, okay, how does what sounds like, again, I'm just a layman here, what sounds like a psychological analysis type thing fits into teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. That is granted that our teacher, our speaker, teaches K through 12. I'm making a bunch of assumptions here, but I'm already getting geared up. I'm happy to be disappointed. Here's the thing. I'd rather be disappointed in my suspicions than have them confirmed because, you know, that would make me happier about the potential future for some children out there. But either way, we're going to find out what it means to go beyond the purpose of an educator. A couple of things before we proceed. First, at the top of the chat box, thank you, Keeverdam, for giving us the GoFundMe. A friend of a friend needs some help. Our friend Twisted Skipster has a friend who is on the verge of, if not already, having most of their utilities or otherwise shut off and needs some help with just covering the basics to tide them over. So if you can take a look at the GoFundMe at the top of the chat box, if you have a couple of bucks to spare to donate, please think about doing so. If you can't, that's fine, but if you can share that link out on social media, that would be appreciated. So that's note number one. Note number two, tonight's bingo card is bingo card B, and this is the new B, because those of you who attended last week, you know why I had to retire the old card B. I won't give it away for those of you that didn't see last week's episode to encourage you to go watch it. But yes, last week's card B had to be retired, a rare event in the TEDx series, but it had to be done. So this B card is a brand new configuration of the squares. So this is its debut. And if you would like to join in on the poll that selects the bingo card each week, follow me on Twitter at scribe_light. I generally post that on Thursday mornings and for resolution by the time the show starts. Okay, with all of that as preamble, long preamble, but I wanted to get it all in. Let's go into the presentation. Tonight's TED Excellence goes just over 13 minutes. I'm going to start off with a few seconds for a sound test. If you guys tell me if you guys can hear it, and then we will proceed.
If I asked you to describe the purpose of a teacher, what would you say?
If we're talking about school teachers, the basics, academics, and not ideology. That's what I've had to go to these days. By the way, the sound on this one, it starts out kind of quiet, but then at some point about 3 or 4 minutes in or something, it just spikes into much clearer and louder audio. I don't know what they did to fix it. I boosted it as best as I could without turning it into an absolute mess. So if it does sound a little light to begin with, it will eventually change. We'll just have to strain our ears slightly. See, non-VT Rex, yeah, low audio. It will get louder, trust me. Tall person, I can hear it, but soft-spoken, yeah. So like I say, don't worry, it'll get there. I just might have to be very quiet, be very, very quiet. I'm listening to educators.
Most of you would probably say that the purpose of a teacher is to teach, right?
Oh, wait, I got something for that. Hold on. I got to have this ready. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to do that all the time. It's a nervous tick.
If I asked you, what are they teaching? You'd probably say things like math, science, literacy, academic subjects. But
yes, that is correct. I would expect that. But she already started with her but here we go.
To describe teaching in this way ignores the more nuanced responsibilities of a teacher.
Okay. Well, yes, being pragmatic. Yes, you have to see to, a group of children and trying to wrangle them into paying attention and, seeing to the kinds of things that children get up to and so on. Yes, that is true. That's just part and parcel. There is a unavoidable babysitter element to it, depending on what age we're talking about, if that's what you mean.
Tonight, we are going to look at moving beyond what the assumed purpose of a teacher is to create a more comprehensive explanation and discover how we can best support our students.
Best support our students or best further our own agendas? I know. This is the cynic in me talking because I've heard a lot of things before. I'm happy to be proven wrong.
A more in-depth explanation would be to say that the purpose of a teacher is to prepare students for the society that we live in.
No. Oh, we got red flag number one. Red flag. Oh, here's something else, too. I forgot to mention this. Because this is something that always comes up in my mind, if not verbally, when I'm watching things regarding education these days. This isn't a bingo card square or anything, but I just want all of us to keep our ears open and see how many times, if at all, parents are brought up in this discussion. And then if they are, in what capacity and to what extent. Because one of the things, for those of you that might not live in the U.S., I don't know, one of the things that's most controversial in the last several years has been the sense of entitlement some school districts and some teachers have over the welfare of their students as though they are their own children, in defiance of the wants or consent of the parents. And oftentimes when I watch these things on educators and they're talking about what they have in mind for their students and everything else, I always wait and see, where are the parents? How are the parents involved? Are they part of the process? Are they specifically kept out of the process? Let's see.
Through social, emotional, and academic education.
Oh, social and emotional learning. Oh, no. She called it SEE, but it's usually SEL. Oh, man.
In order to prepare them effectively, we have to utilize trauma-informed care in our teaching.
Okay, what is trauma-informed care?
Many people assume that students with trauma backgrounds are the minority, but it is actually the majority of our students, which is why trauma-informed care is so critical to teaching.
Okay, again, define trauma-informed care, and how do you know that most of your students have trauma backgrounds?
So what is trauma-informed care?
Yes!
Trauma-informed care essentially comes down to the idea that individuals are more likely than not to have experienced trauma, and that these experiences are likely to impact their behavior in some way.
More likely than not to have experienced trauma. Okay, now you're going to have to define what you mean by trauma.
Tonight, I am going to be discussing why trauma-informed care in teaching is needed, what it looks like, and how it can benefit us.
Okay, so trauma-informed care presupposes that any student you come across, any child, has experienced trauma, undefined in some way, shape, or form, and you have to, what as a teacher, as a consequence of this assumption? I don't know. But I am going to circle mind reading assumes motives on the bingo card. So going to the bingo card. Remember, this is bingo card B, the brand new B. Mind reading assumes motives. More likely than not. More likely than not. Okay, and also circling free space on the board.
Trauma is much more prevalent than many of us realize. One of the tools that we use in education to identify trauma is the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or the ACE quiz.
The ACE quiz. I've never heard of that before. Adverse Childhood Experiences. Okay, I'm learning something today.
An ACE quiz is a 10-question quiz.
10 questions. 10 questions of a child, and again, I'm assuming we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of K through 12, right? Maybe K through 6 or something. She hasn't said yet, but okay, K through 12, I'll assume. A 10-question quiz to a child is going to tell you of the complexities of their trauma.
That totals the cumulative number of traumatic experiences a child has gone through before the age of 18.
Before the age of 8. Okay, so we are talking K through 12. Can you give us these questions? I'd love to see these questions.
We use these scores to inform teachers about the kind of trauma and stress students are experiencing.
How? Okay. I really wish she'd put a graphic up or something listing off the questions. But just speaking of lists and things like that, let's go over the bingo card one time to remind ourselves what we're listening for elsewise. Okay, so from the top, marginalize or marginalization, self-vilification or wretchedness, contradicts own point or argument, feminism, microaggressions or unconscious bias, privilege, benevolent condescension, I have a feeling we might get there, weightless example, plays victim, collectivizes own demographic. We as teachers, that was good enough for me. Wage gap, argumentative non sequitur, attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. Is trauma-informed care a new buzzword or buzz phrase? I have a feeling she didn't come up with it herself. And of course, the usual tell is something I like to call that phrase or something like it ahead of whatever they say. So I'm guessing she's relaying something that already existed. A list, and that requires an actual list of a formal list somewhere in the presentation. Patriarchy, anecdote that probably never happened, diversity, equity, and or inclusion, white supremacy, childhood or family anecdote, systemic or institutional, leaves out vital context, which I'm getting ready to circle if she doesn't start explaining these tests and what trauma is and so on. Sales pitch for product or service. I don't know. Does an ACE test count as a product or a service? And lastly, word salad. So far on the board, we have collectivizes own demographic, free space, and mind reading assumes motives.
And how we can best alleviate that in the classroom.
You're going to alleviate lifelong trauma in the classroom. Okay. Here's my question. Are you, and I mean the royal you when she's talking about teachers in general and we and this, that, and the other, are you an officially licensed psychologist? And two, if you are an officially licensed psychologist, is it appropriate to try to psychoanalyze or provide therapy to students in a classroom setting and group setting during time that should be allocated to academic achievement? That'd be my questions.
Now, many of you are probably thinking that these questions have to do with specific types of trauma, like abuse or neglect.
Again, your mind reading assumes motives. I don't know what these questions are. Why don't you tell us?
And some of them do.
You might think, well, you're right.
But one of the questions is if you have divorced parents.
And okay, well, hey, there's parents. I hadn't imagined we'd be hearing about parents at all. But okay, do you have divorced parents? All right, well, let's say the kid says yes. What do you divine from that information? And what trauma do you think that kid is under simply from knowing their parents are divorced?
Now, many of us have or know someone who has divorced parents.
Mm-hmm.
There are many different levels to trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It is much more common than people think.
And it's much more complex than a 10-question questionnaire to a child in a classroom setting. Again, what exactly will you do with this information during the course of the school day?
And it is very present in our students' daily lives.
Is it any of your business?
The number of trauma backgrounds that we're seeing in our students has actually been increasing over time.
Is that because you keep adding on different layers to it? You keep increasing the levels of the spectrum and finding ways to say that your students are traumatized?
One of the more recent reasons for this is the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, now that one I'll give you. And whose fault was that? I could go on a tirade, but I'll hold back.
Now, I don't know about you, but I would definitely consider a global pandemic to be an adverse childhood experience.
Indeed it was. Indeed it was. Manufactured thuswise.
So if you were to include that in the ACE quiz, that would give every student a starting score of 1.
And that would make you really happy, wouldn't it?
But these scores are more of just a jumping off point. Because while it's important to know about students' backgrounds and the kind of trauma they've faced.
Why? Why is it important for you to know these details about these kids' lives? And what kind of tea leaves are you reading from a 10-point questionnaire? And then what are you doing with that information? That's what I'm more curious about.
It's how you use that information to inform your teaching that's really going to make the difference.
Yes, and please do edify me.
The great thing about trauma-informed care
Mm-hmm.
is that you'll have a plethora of strategies and practices incorporated into your daily teaching to support students with known trauma backgrounds.
Give me an example. As I say countless times, give me an active example. Give me a hypothetical Jimmy the student and his trauma, and tell me how you would tailor your teaching practice to address Jimmy's trauma during the course of a school day.
It will also help you create an inclusive environment for students with unknown backgrounds.
Oh, inclusion, diversity, equity, and or inclusion. Circling that one on the board.
Because it is unlikely that you're going to know every student's history the second that they walk in on that first day.
Well, that's why you give them the ACE quiz the first day, right? Then you don't have to guess about it anymore. You'll know exactly what their trauma background is.
So how do we implement trauma-informed care?
Yes.
Well, one of the ways that you can do this is by implementing social emotional learning, or SEL, into your lessons.
How about we don't? What if we didn't do that? Okay, this is one way. Okay, so in order to apply trauma-informed care into your lessons, you use social emotional learning. So you've taken a 3-word phrase and said that in order to make use of that 3-word phrase, you have a different 3-word phrase. Okay, and you still haven't fully defined the first 3-word phrase, but now we have a new one. Okay, well, go on.
You can do this through directly teaching emotional regulation strategies.
Emotional regulation strategies. How? In a classroom of, I'll be conservative and say 20 kids, and each of them has taken the ACE test, and you know 10 minor small facts about those kids, granted that they were being honest in one way, shape, or form, or accurate in their assessment of whatever the questions are, since you haven't told us what the questions are. Now that you know that, 10 things about 20 different kids, how do you expect to apply anything to one particular kid at any one time? And again, why is it your place as a school teacher to be a classroom therapist?
Such as breathing techniques like box breathing or rainbow breathing, or you could utilize things like read-alouds. Read-alouds are a great tool to use because they can be used to integrate SEL principles into existing literacy instruction.
That sounds creepy as heck. I'm going to integrate SEL practices into literacy instruction. You haven't even told us what SEL is yet, for the sake of this. I've looked at it before, or at least one or two people's opinions on it. Breathing techniques. So you're going to teach your students a kind of Lamaze in order to handle their trauma. I'm just trying to picture how this operates in a classroom where, if I'm the parent, I want my kid going there to learn how to read and write and, know a little bit of history, a little bit of geography, the basics. Unless she teaches at a very specialized school, one of those private schools or something where this is just the norm and the parents are given this as the expectation.
Which is going to make it a lot easier to implement SEL in your given instructional time.
Wait. Let's back up a second. Let me listen to that again.
Or you could utilize things like read-alouds. Read-alouds are a great tool to use.
I would hope you would describe them in depth, but I don't know what that means. Read aloud. So like story time?
Because they can be used to integrate SEL principles into existing literacy instruction.
Okay, so you take a regular literacy curriculum or literacy lesson, and you infuse these lessons with What, dogma? This is all my imagination is allowing me to think of here. Thank you, Officer Buck. Okay, but when do the kids get to the RRR? Yeah. Well, no, this is the reading part. See, we put SEL into the reading part. We've integrated. We just sort of slid into the DMs of the literacy lesson in order to push SEL. What's the knock-on effect of that again?
Into existing literacy instruction, which is going to make it a lot easier to implement SEL in your given instructional time.
Right. Because if you sort of weave a weird educational ideology into your lesson plan, then you prep the kids, you sort of prime them to accept the real lessons for that same ideology when it comes in later in full force, right?
You can also incorporate trauma-informed care practices into your classroom environment.
Okay.
Through things like a calm down corner or flexible seating.
Calm down corner or flexible seating. I mean, sending a kid to the corner, that happened when I was a kid. Calm down corner. Flexible seating. So what, musical chairs? Okay.
Now, a calm down corner is essentially what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's nothing new. Flexible seating. So instead of having assigned seating, instead of providing kids some structure, you just sort of introduce an element of randomness and chaos. I'm sure with young children, that's a great idea.
It is a designated place in the classroom where students can go voluntarily when they need a moment to calm down and regulate their emotions.
So a kid is supposed to know, again, how old are we talking here? I mean, she's mentioned under the age of 18. So again, I'm thinking K through effectively 12. Do you have a calm down corner for your seniors in high school? So a child, I keep thinking we're talking about like K through 6 here, but either way, a child is supposed to know and have the wherewithal to understand that they need to calm down. That's your expectation of the child, to voluntarily put themselves in the corner. What if they don't? What happens if you need to correct this child? What if you need to refer some misbehavior to the parents? What happens then?
These can be elaborate themed spaces like a beach chair and a palm tree and sunglasses for every student.
Oh, yeah, boy. You mean I get to voluntarily put myself in the calm down corner with beach balls and a lounge chair? Gee, maybe I need to calm down every half hour. Thank you again, Officer Buck. Timmy goes to the calm down corner while he's having his Vietnam flashbacks. All this sounds to me is like somebody who is so afraid of having to exert even the mildest discipline onto children, right? It's just like, oh, no, we're not, it's not timeout. Remember timeout? You need to go to timeout. How many of us here either witnessed or had to experience at some point in our lives a teacher or some otherwise saying, you need to go to you need a timeout, and pointed you to the corner? Okay, that's discipline. That's the most mildest form of discipline I ever saw a teacher exert in a classroom to try to maintain order. In this case, you have a voluntary hangout corner. That sounds more like an incentive than a disincentive. But okay.
Or they can be a beanbag in the corner.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. Yeah, that's really going to look. If I'm misbehaving in the classroom, that needs to be corrected. Okay? And as much as I can sort of imagine that teachers today would probably be horrified by the idea, there is utility in public shaming, especially when you're a child and you need to be shown that then within certain instances, some behavior is inappropriate and others is fine. And if you're behaving inappropriately in a social setting and you have the adult in the room has to correct for that. as best as possible, not because they're instilling an ideology, but just because they're trying to maintain some kind of order and also trying to benefit the other students in the classroom from getting distracted because Timmy's decided to go on a tirade. Okay? The teacher's responsibility is to see to the student's education. If there is a student in the classroom who is distracting from that goal, then they either shape up in timeout or they go down to the principal's office and you remove them from the equation until they calm down. And meantime, you go back to your job of teaching the kids the basics of academics. You don't give them Facebook level incentives to just not learn something. Right? Oh, well, we also have a juice bar and a beanbag room if they feel like they need to go calm down. Like, come on, give me a break.
Either works, either is effective.
Really?
The important thing is that students understand they can voluntarily use that space whenever they need it.
Uh-huh. And if they're voluntarily using that space whenever they need it during the course of a lesson, do you just let them?
And that it will never be used as a punishment.
Yeah. No. There's no such thing as a punishment. There are no consequences to your action. There are only rewards and escape hatches.
If you were to use a calm down corner for punishments such as timeout,
yes,
it's not going to have the same calming effect that you want it to in your students.
You're right. It's not meant to have a calming effect. It's meant to have a corrective effect. It's meant to have a disciplinary effect. The most mild one you can do as a teacher without laying your hands on the kid because it's not your kid. I don't... Oh my gosh. I'm starting to sound like an old man or something, aren't I? Thank you, Officer Buck. Again, oh no, not the beanbag, anything but the beanbag. A therapy Game Boy would also work to maximize recovery too, miss. Yeah, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Right? Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Now put her in the comfy chair. Now poke her with the soft pillows. You ever see that that skit from the Spanish Inquisition? Yeah, doesn't quite instill fear or correctiveness in someone if you're just coddling them. Okay, so we can't punish. We can only provide avenues of self-care. Is that it?
Because they're going to associate it with negative behaviors and negative consequences.
Yes. Yes, there are certain behaviors in certain instances that are negative, specifically negative to the learning environment of the other students. And if they don't change their behavior, there will be consequences, negative consequences. But okay, no. In your world, it's all sunshine and rainbows. You know, cotton candy and unicorns. There's no downside. No. Just when you feel like you need to take a calming moment over on the beanbag with your sunglasses and your beach ball, yeah, do as you will. I won't correct you. In fact, in the middle of the math lesson, if you feel like you need to calm down from the stress and trauma of all these numbers, beanbag's right over there. You want a glass of juice too?
So you want to make sure it is only used for its designated purpose.
Its designated purpose. Okay. All right.
Flexible seating is also really great to have in the classroom. Okay. This is where the teacher provides various types of seating. Some examples of flexible seating are wobble stools, floor cushions, exercise balls, or those little fidget bands that go around the bottom of the chairs.
You have got to be kidding me. So teachers are supposed to maintain, wait, you want to put, and again, I'm just imagining the worst case scenario here, right? So K through 6, elementary school, you want to put children, rambunctious children, on exercise balls as their desks. Does anybody here see a potential problem with this? How are they going to focus on the lessons if they're wiggling and they're wobbling on their exercise balls? I mean, are you running a classroom or a gymboree? Thank you so much. England, GG. Long time no see. Disciplinary advice from a lady whose only child is a yippy Pomeranian. Bet. Who knows? Who knows? But holy cats, this is her idea of a classroom, a productive environment for learning in a classroom. Bean bags, beach balls, exercise balls, wobbly chairs, and things. Yes, this is going to get students to pay attention to the lessons. Also, there are no downsides to bad behavior. Okay.
Those are my personal favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does this give students some freedom of choice in the classroom, which can help them feel more comfortable and confident, it also allows them to discover what kind of learning environment they learn best in.
Wait. What learning environment they learn best in? How? If we're talking about elementary school children, how could they possibly know that? How could they possibly come to that conclusion? They're children. You provide, or are supposed to provide, a stable learning environment with structure and lesson plans and consequences for bad behavior, because the goal is to educate the children, and things that distract from that goal are usually unnecessary and unwanted. So now you've removed the simple structure of a seating chart where a child is expected to be at a particular time of day, trying to set them up for the society they will be entering as an adult, by the way. You've taken away the Damocles sword of consequence for bad behavior in an environment that is meant to be focused on learning. I cannot possibly foresee any problems with how you are setting up these kids for the future. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Thank you, John Miller. Again, we can't use X as a punishment. The kids will associate it with being bad. I hate New Age logic. I know, right? Do I sound like somebody from the Dark Ages? I mean, I'm not asking that you bring back like the paddle or something. But there's these little things about structure, about expectation, about attendance and timeliness. You know, the basics of sort of like social discipline, self-regulation. If you are in your desk and it's difficult to move from your desk, then you are kind of penned in. You know what your boundaries are, and you know what the boundaries are of the other students. Maybe I'm just overthinking this. I could be, but okay, keep going.
These are especially helpful for students who may need some form of movement in order to focus.
Movement in order to focus. Okay.
Or it can just be used to engage student through a variety of interesting and fun types of seating.
Okay, how much furniture is each teacher supposed to maintain in their classroom, and where do they store it? I mean, how many exercise balls can I fit into the usual like elementary school classroom, and wibbly chairs and bean bags and, you know, stools or whatever else I'm supposed to have? I know I'm thinking far too pragmatically here, but I don't know.
Lastly, I did want to touch on a few tools that you could have available in your classroom to promote trauma-informed care.
Okay.
Such as fidget toys.
Fidget toys. Okay.
Stress balls.
Stress balls. Does she imagine, or like in my head, I'm thinking that the reality she lives in, every child walks into the classroom and is just an absolute neurotic mess of anxiety and worrying and shivering in fear all the time. Is that how kids operate in her world?
Timers.
Wait, timers? What?
Fidget toys, stress balls, timers, tactile fidget strips, etc.
Yeah, the one thing I want kids to be doing when I'm trying to teach them something is that they are allowed to fidget.
Now, If we're being honest,
I don't know. Are we?
teachers don't exactly have an abundance of time to plan for these kind of changes on a daily basis.
Yes. And here's a question that's still burning a hole in my pocket. How and or why is this anything that is your responsibility? Where in your job description does it say, thou shalt provide therapy to children during the course of the school day?
However, there are practices that you can use on a daily basis and that you
Okay.
already use. A great example of this is building relationships.
Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to circle list on the bingo card because she went down a list of the tools you can use in the course of all this. So there's that. Thank you again, England DG. What happens when all the beanbag chairs are taken first and the person in protected class has to sit on a wobbly chair? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, then you have to start forming seating affinity groups so no one feels alone. That's what you do. Yes, that's what you do. I don't know. Okay, sorry. You're saying what now? Let me back up a little bit.
Already use. A great example of this is building relationships. Building relationships is one of the most important factors of trauma-informed care.
What kind of relationship? Teacher-student or therapist-patient?
Because strong relationships are one of the most important factors of resilience in students who have experienced trauma.
Resilience. I really hope she defines these terms. What does resilience look like in a trauma-informed care environment for a child who you've determined what their trauma background is through a 10-point questionnaire? One of the questions is which, are your parents divorced?
You can actively support this strategy by asking about their interests, doing team building exercises, and promoting academic achievement by emphasizing their growth over their success.
Wait, what? Promoting academic achievement by emphasizing their growth over their success. Okay, I know this is a stupid question. How exactly do you chart their growth? By what metrics do you measure their academic growth? Ay, caramba.
Consistency is also another important part of trauma-informed care.
Consistency. You mean aside from changing up the seating arrangements all the time with exercise balls or wobbly chairs, having a self-imposed calming corner, not putting too much stress on the kids, not having any expectations of behavior or any punishments or any negative consequences? Okay, what kind of consistency you're talking about?
Consistency gives students that security and that routine in order for them to feel comfortable in the school environment.
Routine? What routine? You come in and you give them fidget spinners and exercise balls, and you don't punish them for bad behavior. You just expect them to self-regulate off into the beanbag. What?
This is especially important for students who may not have that security and that routine at home because the school may be the only environment in which they receive that control.
And so you're making this assumption on behalf of all the students because you assume the worst case scenario that they all have disruptive or broken home lives. They may not. Okay, again, when did this become your business? What part of your writ as a teacher came down to making these assumptions about the quality of these students' home lives, and then you have to compensate for what you assume is going on at home, or you're assuming the worst case scenario, and so now you're the guardian angel to them all? My brain just took a vacation there for a second. But thankfully, on that vacation, I came across a Mr. Tickle Trunk and a dancy, smiley, lovely dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wow-wee! Wow! Wow!
That's a drunken uncle, dog cat fox. Thank you so much, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Hope you're doing good. Okay.
You can promote this strategy by displaying a class schedule or routine, frequently reminding them of student expectations.
Student expectations. Oh, what happens if they fall outside the lines of expectations? I mean, you wouldn't want to punish them or anything, right?
And letting them know ahead of time of any changes to their schedule.
Well, okay, that's polite, sure. Okay. What if they don't meet those expectations? What happens then? Do you just hope that they go to the calming corner of their own volition?
One of my favorite strategies that utilizes consistency is called predictable positive attention.
Predictable positive attention, PPA. All these 3-word phrases and concepts. Okay. I haven't heard this one before. Did she say, wait, is it something she likes to call? Sorry.
Changes to their schedule. One of my favorite strategies that utilizes consistency is called predictable positive attention.
I'm going to hold that in reserve. She didn't say it like it was her own thing, but no, the square says attempts to coin new buzzword. Yeah, it's not hers. She's just rattling off something that exists.
Which is where you emphasize routinely giving positive attention in reward for positive behaviors.
So positive reinforcement. Right. Okay, that's not exactly a new concept. What happens when they behave badly again?
Rather than giving negative attention for negative behaviors.
Oh, wait, only accentuate the positive. Never correct for wrong behavior. How do you grade, I wonder? And what happens when you have to give a kid a failing grade? What do you do then? What does PPA say about having to dole out a failing grade?
Now, you've all heard teachers talk about how students act out because they want attention.
Children acting out for attention? Saints preserve us.
Well, they do.
Well, then why did you predicate that with such a dismissive, sarcastic tone? Okay, where's the exception? What's the mic drop here?
But the reason that they do this
is it because of trauma?
Is because they know if they behave a certain way, they're going to get a certain reaction.
Yes. Okay. And so, in your position, what would you do to disincentivize acting out and moderate their behavior for the sake of maintaining a productive learning environment? Any ideas?
And in their mind, negative attention is better than no attention at all.
Perhaps so. So what is your strategy?
Because it's predictable.
Uh-huh.
Instead, if you use predictable positive attention.
Well, isn't predictable positive attention also predictable? If the flaw in negative consequences to bad behavior is that it's predictable, then how is PPA a better strategy? Did I miss something?
You might give them more positive outlets to express their need for control.
Okay, like what?
So if I were to have a student and I
Yes.
said, okay, go work on this, I'll check on you in a little while.
Okay, you have a student, you give them an assignment, and you leave them to their own devices to get the assignment done. Okay, you've given them the responsibility of fulfilling an assignment, all right?
Well, how long is a little while?
Okay, you've got 5 minutes.
I don't know.
Okay, you give them 5 minutes.
That student isn't going to know.
All right, then give a particular time frame.
They have no reference of time for how long they need to do their work or how long it's going to be before the teacher comes back.
This is the major problem of your scenario. Defining a time limit. Okay, easily solved. Can we move on? What does this have to do with anything? And how does this improve a student's behavior if they're acting out? And the problem with negative consequences is that they're predictable, but the solution is predictive, positive, was it attention?
So they're going to act out, so the teacher has to come back.
Wait, whoa, okay. So, merely the nebulousness of the time frame is going to trigger in a kid acting out. All right, well, like I say, easily fixed. Say, I'll check on you in 5 minutes, right? Okay, problem solved. Now, what if they act out in those 5 minutes anyway? What do you do then?
Instead, if I was using predictable positive attention, I might say something like,
you have 5 minutes?
okay, go work on this. I'll come check on you in 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes, sure, that works too. Okay, and because you said 3 minutes instead of a little while, that child will now not act out in a classroom where you can see all the kids at any one particular time anyway. Okay.
And then maybe flip a little 3-minute timer on their desk.
Okay, you set an expectation, you provide some structure, you give them a responsibility. You know what? Great. How is that something new? Is it just taking something that's sort of like common sense, old school stuff, putting a new wrapper on it and calling it a new product? Is that all this is? Thank you, Devil Fruit Zero. Failing grade. My 3-year-old niece is competent enough to pass Oregon high school requirements. There are none now. You see, I could believe that. In fact, speaking of Oregon, I was just reminded yesterday, I believe, wasn't it Mr. Tickletrunk? I believe it was Tickletrunk who was promoting Benjamin Boyce's documentary series effectively on Evergreen State College. Wasn't that, or was that Washington State? I forget. Is that Oregon or Washington State? Okay. I'm thinking of the same general area, the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, somewhere in there, about like school standards and things. That's what triggered it in my mind. But especially in Oregon, especially what we've seen with Portland over the last few years, I could believe it. Oy. But anyway, okay, so setting a time limit, expecting your students to act in a punctual manner. This is predictable positive attention. Okay.
Saying 3 minutes and using that timer is going to give them a reference of time, so they know this is how long I need to work before the teacher comes back.
Wow. What is that? Is this supposed to be profound? Is this supposed to be innovative or something? I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree. Giving a student an assignment, setting a time limit, and expecting them to work within that time limit, that's perfectly fine. That's structure. That's putting the responsibility, the onus on them to complete their task in a given amount of time. Great. That's all great. Why does it need this weird label of positive, predictable positive attention? What? That's just basic. Okay, I'm obviously missing something, or I'm not missing something, and she's trying to grandiose something that's just basic common sense. Thank you, England, again. A lot out there for PPA, but increased in popularity the past 10 years after endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education. Genesis appears to be 2007 paper, Positive Behavior Support by T.M. Scott. Wow. Well, thank you for that pop-up video factoid, England. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, and as far as I can tell, that's the first time I've ever heard of that phrase, predictable positive attention. I've heard of SEL before, social emotional learning. Trauma-informed care. I feel like I've heard that before somewhere, but maybe not in a presentation. It's hard for me to say. But sure, I can believe something like that started in the early 2000s, because the early 2000s seems to have been the flashpoint, no pun intended for you comic book freaks out there, for a lot of these new, let's just repackage old ideas, but then try to coddle the kids and not have anything negative. We don't want to have anything negative. We don't want to punish the kids with negative consequences, even though that's sometimes the best way to learn something.
You can further support this strategy by having them raise their hand.
Wait. Okay, wait. Please don't tell me that all of this new age teacher classroom psychobabble phraseology, yada, 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 new packaging stuff comes down to the most basic elements of a classroom that even I grew up with. Okay, setting a time limit, raising hands. Are you okay? Hold on.
How long I need to work before the teacher comes back. You can further support this strategy by having them raise their hand, coming and tapping on you, coming up to your desk, so that you ensure you do check in with that student after those 3 minutes are up.
All right, class. You have your quiz in front of you. You have 10 minutes to complete it. After you've completed your quiz, raise your hand and I'll come by and collect it. And they're all sitting at their desks, all in nice little rows with a seating chart where they know that where they have to be at a particular time, after lunch, after recess. What about any of this has to do with this weird drive to introduce psychobabble concepts into? I want to go back to the let's weave SEL practices into our literacy lessons. I feel like we've drifted away from some of the more, questionable and interesting concepts that have been thrown our way so far. Now we're back to the most basic of basics. Raising our hands, setting a time limit. Wow.
It is also important that when you check in with the student, you reinforce that positive behavior by praising them.
Praising them for raising their hand. I mean, if you say, thank you, basic politeness, set an expectation, okay. I'm trying not to be overly cynical about some of this, trying to take each concept on as it comes, but okay, yes, you want to reward, at least in some small way, appropriate behavior in the classroom. Yes, positive reinforcement is not garbage or anything, okay.
So saying something like, great job, thank you for waiting.
Sure.
I appreciate your effort.
Okay.
Something small, something easy.
Yes. Okay. Yes. All this sounds fine. Why do you need to put weird new brand names on them? What does it have to do with anything? This sounds like teaching in a classroom 101 to me.
But it's something impactful, because using predictable positive attention.
Basic manners. All you're talking about is basic manners. Jeez. I mean, it feels like someone who's trying to sound really innovative and smart and everything, but it's just basic manners, basic classroom structure and procedure. It's not innovative. It's not anything new. It's not bad inherently. I'm not saying that what she's saying is bad or wrong. I just can't figure out why you're trying to make it sound like it's new. It's not.
Is going to give kids that consistency, that predictability that they need to feel safe and comfortable in the classroom without having to resort to those negative behaviors to get it.
Okay, but what do you do with the kid who behaves negatively in the classroom? If you don't punish or correct that child, then how do the other children feel safe in that classroom environment? If your priority is to see to the educational welfare and the sense of safety and calmness in the classroom, and you have a problem child or children, and you do nothing to correct their behavior, what are you promoting not only in the children who are acting badly, but those that are not? There has to be predictable outcomes for behavior. Yes, both positive and negative. I really, just abstractly, I really wonder what kind of environment our speaker grew up in. And she's never seen any value in a negative consequence for a negative behavior. That idea alone boggles me. And again, I'm not talking about anything extreme, right? I'm just talking about the basics that I saw and went through as a kid, right? You get timeout, and if you keep acting badly, you get sent down to the principal's office for a talking to. You get removed from the classroom because you're a distraction, both for the teacher and the students. And then, at worst, your parents have to be called and they have to be informed about your behavior, what you were doing, try to correct it, etc. By the way, again, where are the parents? So far, we've had one question on a questionnaire about trauma. Are your parents divorced? We haven't actually heard about parental involvement in any of this, which doesn't surprise me, but I wanted to be surprised.
All of these strategies and practices can be used to support students with known complex trauma backgrounds.
None of what you have described has anything to do with treating trauma. Setting expectations in the classroom, positive reinforcement, that's just basic human interaction in establishing a structure and trying to teach. Removing negative reinforcement is bonkers to me, but okay, but none of what you're talking about has anything to do with addressing trauma. So I'm not even sure why you took the time to even mention trauma-informed care at the beginning of this, because nothing you've talked about deals with trauma. Okay, I wish you, maybe she will. She's got 3 minutes. Let's say a kid in the classroom answered on the questionnaire, my parents are divorced. All right. Specifically, what would you do, or what would you introduce into the learning plan, lesson plan, classroom, whatever, to address the trauma that you assume that child is experiencing due to the divorce? I'm still waiting for an active example of what you mean when you say trauma-informed care in the classroom.
But it can also be used to create an inclusive environment for students with unknown backgrounds.
Okay, what do you do with a student where you know the background? Still waiting for that one.
And this benefits everyone involved.
Does it? How?
Not only does it help your kids develop skills like empathy, teamwork, independence, confidence.
Okay. And what does... Okay. How did you... I'm asking rhetorically to the speaker, because I am assuming that in her education, her early education, none of these things were used, right? There was no trauma-informed care. There was no SEL. Okay. How did you learn independence? How did you learn teamwork? I mean, what worked for you before all of this other stuff came around? Or did you not have that at all because there was no SEL?
It also helps the teacher.
Really?
If you have a trauma-informed classroom.
No. If you have infused your students with trauma through your own projection and a list of 10 questions.
Or better, a trauma-informed school.
Oh, better? It's better to have a trauma-informed, okay.
You're going to feel a lot more secure and a lot more comfortable working with student behaviors that are seemingly less predictable or easily mitigated.
So if you assume all of the children in your school are broken psychologically, you're going to have a better time. Okay.
It's also going to allow you to help you support your other teachers in your grade.
Oh, yeah?
If a teacher doesn't know how to work with a student behavior, or maybe they've never seen that behavior before,
Then because you just happen to be a licensed psychologist or child psychologist, you're going to know what to tell them?
you can help them because you are trauma informed.
You are... What is the... No, wait. Okay, if I'm not completely misremembering the definition, trauma-informed care is just making an assumption that the students in your classroom, more likely than not, have experienced some kind of trauma. Right, so you're just making, again, you're just guessing. And so if a teacher says, I have a student who's acting badly, well, I can help that teacher because I already assume that child is broken psychologically. Right? Did I miss something?
Solely teaching academics is no longer enough.
Why? Why is it no longer enough? What changed? What altered the course of the universe within your lifetime that requires you to step outside the boundaries of focusing on academics?
We have to look at students' social and emotional needs.
Why is that your business? I'm still waiting for an answer to that question. Save for the dynamics of the classroom and the necessity of maintaining order to create a learning environment for the children, how is any of that your business or your profession?
In order for them to achieve academically.
I could just be a broken record.
You can implement trauma-informed care through various types of long-term strategies.
Would you like to detail a few?
Or make small intentional changes to your daily practices and classroom environment.
Like?
If you're unsure of how to create a trauma-informed classroom,
Yeah.
I encourage you to reach out to your administration and your school counselors and ask for any resources they have that may help you.
Wait. So if you're not... I don't even know. I've completely lost the plot. I'm circling word salad, just in aggregate, if not for the specific example just then. Like, what am I? So I'm, as a teacher, I suddenly decide out of the blue because I watched your TEDx talk that I need to be trauma informed in my caring for my students. And I have no idea what that means. So I'm going to go off to the principal or the counselors at the school, presuming they already know what that means and what to do about it, and I need them to help me do that. Like, hey, principal, what resources do you have me to have a trauma-informed care classroom? And I imagine that principal is going to look at me like I just stepped out of a flying cat. You know, my neighbor Totoro or something. Right? Just, okay.
Trauma-informed care is meant to support teachers in achieving their purpose of preparing students for the society that we live in.
What? Okay, you said that at the beginning, and I still don't know what that's supposed to mean.
And that is a really daunting responsibility.
It is one self-chosen. And one that you're not necessarily meant to undertake. Where are the parents?
You aren't going to be able to do everything I just named in a single day.
I don't know if I could do everything you named within a year, because I don't know what you're even talking about half the time.
And you may have days where you feel like absolutely nothing you had planned is working.
Is that because all the chairs are exercise balls, the calm down corner is voluntary, and I've decided not to try to relegate or regulate the behavior of the students in the classroom? I mean, are you there to provide structure, or aren't you? On the one hand, you don't want to have desks, you want to have flexible seating. On the other hand, you want to use timers and hand raising. Sounds like a recipe for chaos to me.
And that's okay. This is not a perfect model for you to just take and apply to your classroom.
Then why are you suggesting it?
Each classroom is a unique amalgamation of personalities, behaviors, experiences.
Yes, but you know they all suffer from trauma, though, right?
What works for one teacher may not work for you.
Okay.
You have to work on practicing these strategies and these examples over time to see what works best for you and your students.
If there is no set strategy, if not one thing is going to work in one place and not in another, or this might or that might, then all you're doing is one giant guessing game experiment. So what is the point of having these specific 3-word phrases as though they explain anything when you're telling us now at the end of the presentation that nothing that you've mentioned previously may actually make a difference? I mean,
But if you put in the time and you put in the effort in making your classroom trauma informed,
which we still have absolutely no idea what that's supposed to mean, except to assume that all the students are psychologically damaged in some way based on a test of 10 questions, one of which is, are your parents divorced?
I guarantee that you will see a positive impact on each one of your students' lives.
You guarantee this?
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was, for as much trauma-informing care as was going on there, I don't feel particularly informed, but I do feel slightly traumatized. Anyway, let's move on to the bingo card, because I got nothing else I could either try to add or conjure up out of that one. Not quite sure what I expected, but I guess I got what I got. All right, so the bingo card, here it is as I have it right now. Not too much there. I'm going to go over it one more time myself. If you have any arguments for squares to be circled, please hold on to them, and I'll get to you presently. Marginalized or marginalization? And not that I recall. Well, I mean, there was sending the kid to timeout or whatever. That might be a stretch. Self-vilification or wretchedness. Yeah, it might not be easy. You might be stressed out as a teacher. You might have to, a little bit. It's a daunting task. I don't know. Contradicts own point or argument. I don't know if it was a contradiction, but going through all these high-minded phrases and concepts and everything and not really explaining them, and then coming back down to the basics of raising your hand and setting a time limit, that doesn't feel like I'm learning anything new or some new concept at all. So yeah. Feminism, no. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, no. Privilege, no. Benevolent condescension. I mean, was it condescending? I don't know. See, it's one of those things where if I'm listening to someone who is a true believer in what they're saying, it's hard for me to necessarily classify what they're saying as inherently condescending, right? But maybe one of you guys has a good argument for that. Weightless example. I mean, how about the ACE test? Right, or actually, or should that be an argumentative non sequitur? I don't know. I'm kind of fuzzy on that one. Weightless example. I might need some help with that one. Wage gap, no. Argumentative non sequitur. I mean, not explaining what you do with the divorce question. I mean, she brought that up very specifically. And so I thought, okay, well, if a kid answers, yes, my parents are divorced, then I would have thought that that'd be a jumping off point for, okay, in that case, this is how you'd want to approach that student, right? That seemed to me like the most logical progression of bringing up that example. but that didn't happen. And so it just kind of was there and it went and didn't come back again. In fact, the test in general didn't really come back again as to how that was supposed to inform your strategy. Attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. Nothing she said here was of her own creation or something new. She got this out of some pamphlet or manual somewhere. So yeah, and as England informed us, the whole PPA thing wasn't anything new. That was England, wasn't it? I'm not misremembering that, I hope. And let me make sure so I wasn't completely off of yes, England EG, yes. Okay. My mind might have gone sideways after all this. Okay, what's next? Let's see. Patriarchy. No, again, she didn't really bring up any sort of gender wars or gender roles or anything, which I was kind of surprised by. Anecdote that probably never happened. Did she give us any anecdotes? She gave us scenarios. I don't know that she ever gave us an anecdote per se. White supremacy, no. Childhood or family anecdote. She never talked about herself. She never talked about her family. No. Systemic or institutional. I'm gonna say institutional insofar as school systems, and you talked about like trauma-informed school and things like that, and systems and strategies. Leaves out vital context, most definitely. Defining terms, providing examples, and the examples that she ended up providing were, again, sort of like boilerplate. This is how you sort of regulate a classroom kind of stuff. Raising hands, basic manners, yeah, positive reinforcement when it's deserved, that kind of thing, yeah. Sales pitch for product or service. This was a sales pitch. This was a sales pitch for SEL. This was a sales pitch for PPA. It's a product of a kind. And especially when you have to go buy the books and the materials and the resources and everything for it. So she was encouraging people to take on these ideologies into the classroom, especially trauma-informed care, which I'm still not exactly sure what that's supposed to be. And the definition she gave at the top of the presentation sure sounded to me like, just assume all of your children are psychologically traumatized, which doesn't really sound like a great strategy to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But anyway, so that's what I've got so far. If you guys have any arguments for squares to be circled, please put them in the chat now. If you've already done so and I've just missed it, please just repost it. Bridget, Scribelight, the time limit stuff is benevolent condescension. She acted as if people don't usually use specific times for assignments. Oh, that's true. I mean, yeah, she brought up these things like there's, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you know what? You got it. Benevolent condescension? Yes. It might not have been the most like acidic condescension, but it definitely felt like you're talking down to thinking people a little bit. Megan Ring, Scribelight, contradicted her point by saying that it might not work for everyone, but also she guarantees that it will make a positive difference. That is true. Did I already circle contradict zone point or argument? I did, didn't I? I did. Okay. So yes, but that's also a good example. That's all. By the way, and I don't think I mention this very often, if I've already circled a square, but you have a good example or a good argument for that same square that's different than the one I came up with, by all means, put it in there. I'll read that out too. England, it was also a sales pitch for herself as she enters her master's program. I bet it's equally likely she did this talk to spruce up her resume for her master's program. Huh? There is something about that, being able to say, I started a TEDx talk. I've seen that a couple of times now where I forget where it was. I think it was one or two talks back where something I don't usually do, but I was curious about the speaker. It was either one that I did or one that I didn't do. Either way, I saw a TEDx and I was curious about the speaker's background, specifically to find out, did they have any qualifications for the subject they were talking about? And they had their own website where they did like self-help and, life coaching and stuff. And even though the TEDx, I swear this is true, the TEDx had been posted that day, right, onto the TEDx website and then on to the TEDx YouTube page, they already had on their website a little plug that said, as seen on TEDx. Like they must have just timed it day and date. Mr. Tickletron, Scribelight, predictive positive attention does seem new. I've been looking for it a bit, but she repeated it but didn't highlight it like I made this. Does that count? Well, didn't England say that it was like from a paper in 2007 or something derivative therefrom? Yeah, nothing she said in this sounded like this is an invention of my own. She was evangelizing. That's how I took it. I mean, I'm happy to take other arguments elsewise, but throughout this entire thing, I just felt like she was evangelizing preconceived notions from other places. That this wasn't her concept. It wasn't her proposal. But let's see. Scrappy, trauma-informed care is you're not gonna die while they're bleeding as you're working on them. Well, that, like I said at the top of the show, it's like, since we're talking about classrooms, I'm assuming we're not talking about a hospital environment, right? That kind of trauma. Jose Chacon, weightless example, the example of parents' divorce. I use that for argumentative non sequitur. And I hate to double dip. It might apply if needs be, but I mean, the other way, I mean, I guess double dipping on the other side of it with the contradicts on point thing. Weightless example is raising hands, saying please and thank you, setting a time limit. Like, is that an example of trauma-informed care? How she actually did bring this up, didn't she? She said, like, you know, by setting it, if I don't set a time limit, they're going to act out. And then she set a time limit, and this is going to help kids. But how? I know I'm going sort of sideways on your suggestion, Jose, but I just, yeah, there's a lot of overlapping here. So if not for yours, then at least for some of the others, I'll circle weightless example. There was, I also forgot to update the card for benevolent condescension. Okay. We are really close to at least one bingo, but I don't know if we're going to get there. And given what happened last week, no spoilers, it might be okay. It might balance the scales a little bit. Advocates Diaboli, would not assuming all kids with divorced parents have trauma imply kids with married parents have privilege? Ooh. I like your train of logic. Unfortunately, there was no station in the presentation for the train to stop at. But I like that. I like that. That's a nice try. Nice try. Double dipping is allowed. It's true. Yes. I always hesitate, right? I always hesitate a little bit because I don't want to just, you know, try to cover the card for the sake of covering the card. But in this case, yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I don't want to make it an automatic. I want to make myself and you, the audience, individually or otherwise, fight for it, so to speak. Megan Ring, traumatized students count as a marginalized group. Oh. Ew, I like that. I like that. Or those that aren't acknowledged. If their trauma isn't acknowledged, they end up being a marginalized group. You know what? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And consequently, this is all Megan Ring's fault, if you can believe it.
Won't somebody please?
Bingo. B-I-N-G-O.
Okay.
Right?
Bingo. Down the diagonal. Thank you, Megan Ring. We got one bingo out of the deal. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? Mr. Trunk, I always agree. The sanctity of the card must remain intact, or else this game is a worthless sham. A sham, I tells you. Yes. Yes. I have to impose certain rules and expectations because ultimately I want us to learn something. I want us to, practice our analytical skills. Even if the presentation we watch is absolute nonsense, when it comes down to the bingo card, this is where the rubber meets the road as far as going over each square and thinking to ourselves, okay, what in this presentation applies, what doesn't? What did we listen to? What did we hear? How do we synthesize this information and so on? I think this is the meat, hopefully the meat of the show, and tries to promote critical thinking about some things that aren't necessarily all that critically thought out. But there you go. Again, any other arguments for squares to be circled? Let's see. England EG, but doesn't she presume all students have trauma by her worldview? Yes, but she also worried about leaving students out. She also worried about, not wanting to ignore her students and that certain students be left out because she didn't acknowledge their trauma and this, that, and the other, and so on. So I get you. But it was a good argument, and she was trying to be very inclusive, right? She wanted to be inclusive. She didn't want to leave anybody out. England again. John, honestly, 2020 should have shown you how society truly values teachers, glorified babysitters. Kind of sad, but then again, perhaps they've earned it. That's what they've turned themselves into, or at least that's what they've been encouraged to believe of themselves. It seems like to me is that, as I mentioned at the top of the show, no longer the sort of stereotypical position of a college professor. Now grade school teachers are encouraged to see themselves as activist trainers, as change makers, as gurus. That's what there's actually a TED Talk or a TEDx, I forget. I should really do a director's cut kind of thing. I should take that TEDx. There's one particular TEDx from several years ago. I did a scripted TEDx on. I believe the title I gave it was something like fully integrated or full integration or something. And it was one of the most blunt examples of a teacher who has obviously broken through her reasonable remit as an educator. I won't go through the whole thing here. Maybe I'll do that as like a special sometime. I'll find that one again and I'll do a live version of it. Obviously it might be somewhat repetitive, or maybe I'll just find it and sort of repost it here or something. But yeah, if you want to look up on my channel and search on the little magnifying glass, I think it's called full integration or fully integrated or something. If you put an integration into the thing, it should bring it up, I would hope. Anyway, if you want to see a teacher who has completely gone off the deep end with her own sense of self-importance and righteousness, holy cats, you can't get much better than that one. So definitely look that one up. But with that, everybody, I think I'm going to call this here. We have our bingo. It's not everything, but then, given what happened last week, I think we can survive a bit. Programming notes, Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern will be the Sunday stream, where I'll talk about a thing. I haven't decided what it'll be yet. I usually decide that on Saturday, but also Sunday as well. Sunday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern will be episode 2 of Book Review of the Vampire. Yes, a special little fun project I'm doing with my friend Leonora. We are both reading in tandem Interview with the Vampire, because why not? And we're doing little shows of just sort of reviewing what we've read as we go through the various sections. They're not really chapters, just for fun. If that's something that interests you or something you'd like to read along with us for, by all means, that happens Sunday evening, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Right now, we are moving through, we did section 1, and these are sections insofar as like where the words have a giant paragraph break. They don't really call them chapters, but we went through section 1, and from last week till this coming Sunday, we're going up through section 6. So we're doing 5 sections per week going forward until we're done with the book. I hope that didn't sound like VCR instructions, but that's the way it is. Elsewise, I'm still trying to arrange for the next Living on Borrowed Crime. There's several true crime content creators out there I've been in contact with. It's all about scheduling and finding a day where they're free and not working or something else is going on. And there is a tentative plan for sometime in mid to late August, if we can swing it, to get on a panel discussion of several true crime content creators to all discuss a single case that they've all done videos and research on. That might be interesting, fingers crossed. But I'll let you know more about that as it gets closer. But with that, everybody, I'm going to call it here. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe at the top of the chat box, please take a look at that if you have the opportunity. And if you can't donate to that, by all means, please share that out on social media to help out Twisted Skipster's friend, try to cover some bills in a time of hardship. Everyone, oh, there it is, England DG, yes, at the last second. A Curriculum of Fear, full integration, yes. Look that one up. If you want to see, again, if you want to see a teacher off the rails, just take a look at that one and let me know what you think in the comments of that video. It's a bit old, but line it up with what we watched today and see if you don't see some similarities. Everyone, again, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday and your Friday ahead of you. Hope you have a good weekend, and I hope to see you on Sunday. Hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.